Hey guys, this is Thomas over here, nursemoneytalk.com. I'm actually going to take a question today, and it was asked a while back. It was by Kane Gray 7697, who asked, how hard is FNP school versus nursing school? So this one is kind of interesting because I think the answer is going to vary a lot. And so for those of you guys that don't know, I'm an APRN now. And if you ask me, every single time, there's probably not a scenario that I can think where I wouldn't say that FNP school to me was a much harder experience than nursing school. From just about every metric, I actually think nursing school was easier compared to FNP school. But the things that made it hard for me, I can actually see a scenario where for some of you guys, it might actually be what makes it easy. Let me just go straight on with FNP school, what made it harder. So when I went through nursing school, I was much younger then. Age wasn't really the big thing, but the thing that did matter was that I was single. I had relationships here and there, some long, some short, but I wasn't married and I didn't have any kids. And so that alone changes the entire dynamic, because if you're in school now, or if you remember a time when you're in school, you can probably appreciate this, where like sometimes you'll have stretches where there's just a lot that you have to do. And so when you are single or you're in a relationship, but it's not really anything all that serious, if you have like a week or 2 weeks where you have to shut it down and get some stuff done, you know what? You could bunker down. It's like, you tell the fam, okay, hey, I got some stuff I need to get done. I'll see y'all in a week or two or whatever. You can talk to nobody, focus, and get stuff done. It's not really something you can do when you have kids. There were times when big assignments were due and I'm trying to get stuff knocked out, and then the easiest thing would just be to just bunker down and not talk to anybody. But you can't really do that when you're a dad or when you're a mom or when you have a spouse, because they expect a certain level of attention, which I think that's very reasonable. One situation I can immediately think of was, there was like, I think it was a big paper I was trying to get done. I was kind of stressed trying to get it together. My wife was at work, and so it's like I'm trying to do that, trying to make sure my son was okay. He's like walking in, he's like, Daddy, will you play with me? And so it's like I'm trying to get stuff done and he's tugging on me, and the way he's saying it and the look on his face, I mean, it breaks your heart, honestly, or at least for me. And so like instead of doing that assignment, which I ended up staying up much later and being much stressed for several days just to get that knocked out. Now, instead of doing that, next thing I know, I'm in his room for, I don't know, for like a couple hours playing some game that I had no idea what the rules were, except that I was losing. And whenever I did think like, oh, I'm understanding the rules, I kind of know what's happening, the rules would change to guarantee that I would lose. The other thing that made FNP school very difficult, going back to the differences of the times of when I actually was in FNP school and nursing school, was that when I was in nursing school, I had just got done with my first degree. So it was like I went through school, got my prereqs, my business degree, then went straight to nursing school. There was no time gap. As opposed to getting my nurse practitioner, where I had been in school, huge gap, and now I'm going back to school. That's hard. That is very hard, because I had to go back and completely relearn how to study, how I took notes, how I did this, how I did that. I had to relearn it all. And if you're in the midst of back to back, schooling, it might not seem like that big of a deal, but after a consistent gap, it kind of is, because you take for granted how after all of those years of schooling, the different things you had done to kind of refine and hone in your studying. And you use it or lose it. And so I had lost mine after an extensive period of not being in school and now trying to go back and relearn it. That was hard. It was painful to try to go back and relearn all of those things. The other parts that made FNP school very difficult was just the setup of the entire program itself. And this is nothing uncommon for my particular program. It's actually common for just about every other program I know of. And that is that I had to find my own clinical sites. That was painful. That is difficult. It sucked. It was horrendous. The amount of stress that came with that, the classmates that I had who couldn't find one, and apparently, from what I understand, had to take a semester off because they weren't able to find a clinical site on the preceptor, or you would find one and then something would happen at the very last minute. I was sweating the entire time about that. And some of the sites I found, it was like at the very last minute, getting extremely lucky. Those were the things that made nursing school much easier than FNP school, was that I didn't have to find my own clinical sites. I might not necessarily have liked where I was at or my nursing preceptors I was with, but at least I didn't have to deal with finding the site. And the other part of that was that there was a lot of administrative headaches that I had to deal with in my nurse practitioner program that I didn't have to deal in nursing school. A lot of like the nitty gritty, and most of it came with finding clinical sites. Different states had different requirements, so you had to make sure where you were at fit the requirement of your state, all of those things. And so there were a lot of admin headaches, busy work. Not so much busy work, but it was just like the amount of hours that was spent on admin work and not on actual studying for school was pretty extensive. Now, I don't want to spend all of this time making it seem like I had such a horrible time and there was nothing good about FNP school, yada, yada, yada. I don't want that to be the case, because there are certain aspects of FNP school that were actually a little easier than nursing school. The first one was that unlike nursing school, I had my RN licensure as a backup. And so for some of you guys who've watched many of my videos on the channel, you guys know that I was in one of the states where I could take my LPN during RN school. And I did that when I could to try to hopefully give me a fallback plan. That was one of the things that made P school in the back of my mind seem a little easier, almost like I had wiggle room, which was that I knew at the end of the day, I had my RN licensure as a backup. And so if for whatever reason I completely bombed school, didn't pass, which probably a really bad and negative way to have thought about it, but I was thinking about worst case scenario, I had a fallback plan. One other part that I think is also important to highlight is that unlike nursing school, when I was taking and going through my FNP classes, I already had a pretty strong healthcare knowledge base. When I went through RN school, I'd never worked in healthcare before. I didn't have a whole lot of knowledge for what was going on. This is different with FNP school, where, of course, I went through RN school and I'd worked in healthcare and had been in the healthcare, space, if you will, for years and years leading up to that. And so I had a lot of baseline knowledge for things that I didn't have in nursing school. So no base, and you're creating a foundation, which was nursing school, as opposed to FNP school, where you already had ideally a very strong foundation or knowledge base, and you're kind of then just adding to it, in other instances, refining it. With that said, let me know what your thoughts are in the comment sections below. If you are looking for a nursing program, whether RN school, LPN school, or FNP school, make sure to check out nursemoneytalk.com/schools to find a nursing program. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you very soon in that next video.